Hello and welcome to It Really Happened, where we dive into some of the wildest and most surprising stories from around the world. Today's story sounds like something straight out of a movie. A scammer from Jamaica tried to trick a retired man out of a fortune. But what the scammer didn't realize is that he picked the wrong target and paid the consequences big time. Stick around to hear how this all went down. Let's rewind to 2014. William Webster and his wife Linda were living a peaceful, quiet life after Webster's long and impressive career in public service. For a little background, William Webster was a federal judge and also the only person in U.S. history to have been the director of both the FBI and the CIA. With a resume like that, you'd think no one would want to mess with him, right? Well, one Jamaican lottery phone scammer didn't get the memo. One day, Webster received a phone call from someone claiming he had won a massive prize, $72 million to be exact. The caller went on and on, congratulating Webster and making it sound like his life was about to change forever. Now, most of us have heard of these kinds of scams before. Someone tells you that you've won a fortune, but then they say you need to pay a fee or some taxes up front to claim your prize. And that's exactly what the scammer wanted. He told Webster he needed to send $50,000 for taxes and handling fees before he could get his $72 million. Some scammers like to do a bit of research on their targets to sound more convincing. In this case, the scammer threw out details about Webster's background, saying he knew Webster had been a lawyer, a judge, and even served in the Navy. Pretty thorough, right? Except for one major thing, he somehow missed the fact that Webster had run two of the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. A huge oversight, as you can imagine. At first, Webster played it cool, but his wife Linda could tell that something was up. She overheard the conversation and was not too happy about him engaging with this guy. But the Websters weren't just going to ignore the scammer and move on. They wanted to help the FBI take this guy down. So, with the FBI's guidance, they strung him along with a series of recorded phone calls, helping gather evidence for the investigation. As the conversations continued, the scammer started to get impatient. It seemed like his sweet talk and promises of riches weren't working. And he slowly realized that the Websters were onto him. So, what did he do? He got angry, really angry. And then, the threat started. The scammer, whose name was Kenil Thomas, became enraged when it became clear that his would-be victims weren't falling for his tricks. That was when Thomas took things up a notch. He began threatening Webster and his wife. He said things like, "I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna kill your husband, I'm gonna set your house on fire." But he didn't stop there. Thomas also told Webster that he knew where they lived, that he had guys who could carry out these threats, and even said he'd use a sniper to take them out. He warned Webster to never return to Washington, D.C., or he'd be shot. Pretty terrifying stuff, right? But what Thomas didn't know was that every word of his threats was being recorded and sent straight to the FBI. He made the huge mistake of threatening someone who knew how to handle this kind of situation better than almost anyone in the world. As you can imagine, the FBI took these threats very seriously. They knew they needed to catch Thomas, but he wasn't in the U.S. He was making these calls from Jamaica. For a while, it seemed like he was out of reach. But in 2017, 3 years after his threatening calls, Thomas made a big mistake. He flew to New York City, possibly thinking he could operate his scam from inside the U.S. The moment he stepped off the plane, he was arrested. In February 2019, after years of scamming people out of their money and making dangerous threats, Kenil Thomas was sentenced to nearly 6 years in federal prison. It turned out he had collected at least $300,000 from other victims, mostly older people, using the same lottery scam he tried on Webster. William Webster later said that this whole experience opened his eyes to how vulnerable older people can be to these kinds of scams. Many older folks, he explained, tend to be more trusting and polite, making them prime targets for scammers. Webster felt that if someone without his background had been in his position, they might have fallen for the scam or, worse, been terrified by the threats. Scammers often take advantage of people's hopes and dreams, making them believe they're on the verge of something amazing, like winning a huge lottery prize. But instead of delivering on those promises, they trick their victims into handing over their life savings. This is exactly why scams like this are so dangerous, especially for older individuals. So, what can we learn from this story? First, it's always important to be cautious when something sounds too good to be true, because it probably is. And second, scammers can be pretty convincing, but they're no match for someone like William Webster, who turned the tables and helped the FBI bring his would-be scammer to justice. If you're wondering how you can protect yourself and your elderly loved ones from scammers, here are a few tips. Number 1, be skeptical of unsolicited calls. Scammers frequently claim the person has won a lottery or prize, needs to pay unexpected taxes, or owes a bill. Remind your loved ones that legitimate organizations will not ask for sensitive information or money over the phone without prior written communication. Number 2, never share personal information. Encourage everyone to avoid sharing personal details like social security numbers, bank account info, or credit card numbers with unknown callers. Number 3, use call screening and blocking features. Most smartphones and landlines have options to block suspicious numbers. You can also register with the National Do Not Call Registry, which can reduce unwanted calls. Number 4, report suspicious calls. If you or a loved one receives a suspicious call, report it to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, or local authorities. This helps law enforcement track and shut down scammers. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this story, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another incredible story. Have you ever received a scam call or email? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, stay alert, stay safe, and take any promises of instant wealth with a huge grain of salt. Until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.